Very soon, thousands of people that make up the annual World Falun Dafa Day Parade will color the streets of New York City.
We'll bring you the celebration and a lot more here on NTD, starting right now.
And you are looking at a live view of Bryant Park right there along the parade route where the parade will come in about 20 to 30 minutes. And from all of us here at NTD, happy World Falun Dafa Day. Today marking the 34th anniversary since the meditation practice Falun Dafa, also known as Falun Gong, was introduced to the public.
We'll bring you the lion dancers, dragons, music, and messages of gratitude right here on NTD.
I'm Carrie Dunst.
And I'm Stephanie Cox.
And as we wait for the parade to reach our cameras around 11:15, we've got a lot prepared for you, including some live, on-the-ground sneak previews of what's to come.
And joining us here at the desk is Cynthia Sun, a researcher at the Falun Dafa Information Center and studying for her master's degree in foreign service at Georgetown University. She's also Miss NTD. Also with us is Li Shai Lemish, a master of ceremonies at Shen Yun, a world-class performing arts company that showcases China before communism and brings stories of Falun Dafa on stage. Thank you both so much for being here with us.
Good to be here.
And Cynthia, I'd like to start with you. A lot of excitement for today's parade. As a practitioner yourself, what does Falun Dafa Day mean to you?
I think to me, there's an overwhelming feeling of gratitude. As far back as I remember when I was a little kid, Falun Dafa Day, regardless of what day of the week it was always full of celebration. I remember there were big balloons in the park. We would have food and music. And it was really a time to celebrate each other, to celebrate community. Because as you know, as the persecution rages on, there's so little that we can actually celebrate and so little positives that we can actually see amongst all the religious persecution going on in China. So I think this is the one day that we can actually celebrate all of those things, celebrate the Creator's grace, celebrate our teacher's birthday, and celebrate each other.
That's so beautiful, and I know exactly what you mean, that feeling of food and music and joy and culture, especially amidst the persecution. Li Shai, I'd love to come to you. What are you thinking about on the 34th anniversary here of Falun Dafa Day?
Well, I mean, it's not every day you get to be part of a relatively new international holiday and see it grow over your lifetime and be part of it. So it's definitely an honor to be kind of the first generation of people celebrating World Falun Dafa Day with people around the world. On my mind, I would say, are the people of China, and wanting to celebrate the day with them. The Falun Gong practitioners who have endured the persecution for more than 2 decades now, their families, and actually be able to celebrate this internationally, really, truly around the world, specifically in China with those people.
That really does sum it up. Yeah, there's this longing for the largest population of Falun Dafa practitioners, which of course are in the mainland, and we're going to be revisiting those themes throughout the day. But right now, we want to toss over to the World Falun Dafa Day Grand Parade making its way through the streets of Manhattan, and let's go through what the parade route is going to look like. The parade starts at 47th Street and 2nd Avenue near the headquarters for the United Nations. From there, it goes down 2nd Avenue and turns west on 42nd Street, passing Grand Central Terminal, Bryant Park, Times Square, and the Port Authority bus terminal, ending near the Chinese consulate on 11th Avenue.
What have you most loved in previous years, having seen and been to many of these parades so far?
I mean, I think the dances are just extraordinary. There are some fairy floats in the parade, and sometimes you'll see people meditating, and sometimes there will be kids performing on it, or playing music, or even drumming on the back of the float. And I think it's just always such a joy to watch, because you can really see how energized they are, and the music really brings the crowd's energy as well, because last year, I remember there were people just jamming out on the streets near Times Square when we were passing by Times Square. And you can just tell how like everyone felt the atmosphere of celebration, and also a celebration of America's freedoms, because you know, as Li Shai said earlier, in China, you can't have a parade like this, like we are passing by all the icons in New York City.
You know, one thing that really strikes me, because we had the honor of doing this together last year, was that they're not fair weather fans at all. Remember, it poured last year. I felt bad. We were here dry in the studio, and you could see the smiles and the joy. Lishai, why would thousands of people go through the streets of New York on World Falun Dafa Day in a rainstorm?
Well, the principles of Falun Dafa are truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. I think a little bit of rain, people would take it as a test of their forbearance. Like, okay, this is part of our belief system. We can endure this. It's not a big challenge. And honestly, when you think about what's happening in China, for example, today we're celebrating the Falun Dafa Day, and there's a big parade. But on July 20th, you guys cover the persecution anniversary mark parade, and that's in Washington, D.C. a lot of time, and it can be well over 100 degrees, and people are very willing to endure the heat and the long march to bring attention to persecution in China. So I think that's kind of a common theme. But I think also Falun Dafa Day is a day to really, like Cynthia said, celebrate and really feel the gratitude for what we've been given in terms of a sense of spiritual guidance. And I think because of our practice, it's a lot of it's about looking inside for your shortcomings and where you can improve. And that can be, uncomfortable sometimes. But to actually take a day and say, you know what? Actually, I've benefited so much and our community has benefited so much from this. Let's celebrate this for a day, I think is really, really special. So a bit of rain is not a problem.
Certainly so. And as somebody who's also practiced for many years, we can look back and see right at the beginning when this practice first came to the public, 34 years ago, it spread like wildfire. I wonder if you could tell us a little about those initial moments and really what we're celebrating today.
So you really got to go back to the end of the Cultural Revolution in China. This is a period of time when the Chinese Communist Party had just completed its biggest and most massive destruction of traditional Chinese culture and its spiritual heritage of Buddhism and Taoism and other spiritual faiths. And then you have what's called a Qigong boom, which is this massive kind of revival of the tradition of spiritual practices, energy practices, Tai Chi being the most prominent example. And that happens in the 70s and 80s. And then at the tail end of that, Master Li Hongzhi introduces Falun Dafa to the public and says, actually, let's talk about Qigong. It's not just for being healthy. It's actually for moral improvement, for spiritual elevation, ultimately for enlightenment. It's a spiritual practice. And he teaches it for free. Whereas at that point, Qigong had become a big money-making enterprise. There are a lot of sham Qigong masters out there, a lot of just charlatans. And he says, actually, we're going to make it free. And here's what this is about. And so people who had been looking for this for many years and experienced all kinds of phenomena in their exercise didn't really know what it was, and he explains everything. So it really does catch on. And you have between 1992 and 1999 goes from nobody practicing, except for the practice being passed down kind of generation after generation, to 70 to 100 million people practicing in China.
Just remarkable.
And that was pre-internet as well. So it went viral through word of mouth.
All through like hand-to-hand.
No TikTok.
Yeah, no Instagram back then. Well, we're going to definitely be constantly going through some of those really interesting anecdotes from the early days all the way through to today, where we have several thousand people all gathered. They're ready to go at this parade. So now we wouldn't be a live show if we didn't have a little hiccup here or there, but let's go now live to NTD reporter Flora Hua. She's near the start of the parade right next to the UN. Flora, what's happening over there?
Hi, Carrie. Yes, the atmosphere here is great. You can see people wearing bright yellow shirts. Everybody looks so happy as they are celebrating World Falun Dafa Day. And I have something special for you. We have a dragon.
Okay, guys.
Hi, guys. Are you ready for a little performance for our audience?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's do a...
Wow, you can see the dragon having a yellow pearl in its mouth, and it's decorated in blue and yellow. Wow, the movement. So dragon is one of the symbol in Chinese culture. It means prosperity and good luck, and really very wonderful dance. And you can see there are Westerners and Chinese Americans all joining this team effort to bring culture and celebration to the people in New York City. Wow. Really amazing. You can see the shining blue. Wow, that's really great. And so as we go, we will bring you more report from the site. For now, back to you, Carrie.
Keep us posted out there, Flora. Be careful, that dragon's right on your shoulder there. Amazing. And I'd love to get your reaction to when you see, that's A little bit foreign for Westerners, but how do you react to that?
I mean, just two things. One, that dragon is much heavier than it looks. I do CrossFit, and that dragon takes a lot of core strength. Two, I think a lot of American friends might be wondering why it's not breathing fire and why it's blue and yellow. In Chinese culture, there's actually a common assumption that dragons are born from bodies of water. And so they're usually associated with either seas or oceans or lakes. And it's actually the complete opposite from American myths and European myths.
Alicia, have you ever tried being part of the dragon?
I have not. I've introduced them on stage back in the early days before Shen Yun and some of the New Year productions that we had, and it looks like a lot of work. Yeah, the dragons are auspicious. They're signs of wisdom and good fortune, and very much a part of Chinese lore, and they can transform into other beings. And so I think, and there's a whole story with the dragon and the pearl and all of that, but really nice to have the dragon part of the parade, very traditional.
And despite being persecuted in China today, Falun Dafa has come to be recognized and praised by the U.S., other world leaders, and communities across the globe. Let's go now to NTD's Tiffany Meyer and Dave Martin on the resilience and success of the practice.
That's right. It was 34 years ago today that Falun Dafa was introduced in a small classroom in China, one of a number of what are called Qigong practices, but this one was special.
Yeah, like you said, it started in a small classroom back in 1992 by Master Li Hongzhi, attended by approximately 180 people. But what set this form of Qigong apart were its spiritual concepts and emphasis on moral character, so much so that by 1999, just 7 years later, it was estimated that 100 million people were already practicing it.
A massive amount of people. Now, its health benefits and spiritual impact on society was both recognized and praised by the Chinese state, but that all changed in just a few years.
Yeah, exactly. Fearing the rapidly growing size and influence of the practice, on July 20, 1999, then Chinese Communist Party leader Jiang Zemin ordered a campaign to eradicate Falun Dafa. But despite outlawing it, despite using their state-run media to smear it, despite going so far as to even jail, torture, and even kill practitioners of it, Falun Dafa continues to this day, nearly 27 years later.
And in those 27 years, Falun Dafa practitioners have continued to debunk the Communist Party's propaganda against the practice and gain the support of leaders around the world.
Exactly. And here in the U.S., President Trump, during his first term, met with a persecuted Falun Gong practitioner in the Oval Office alongside others who've suffered from religious persecution, hearing firsthand about the Chinese regime's repression.
It's also a very bipartisan issue. Congress passed the Falun Gong Protection Act last year with broad support. Senators Ted Cruz and Jeff Merkley are now sponsoring a new bill that'll target the Chinese Communist Party's practice of forced organ harvesting against Falun Dafa practitioners and other prisoners of conscience.
And throughout the years, Tiff, officials, mayors, lawmakers, governors have recognized and celebrated World Falun Dafa Day. As you can see behind me, these are just a few of the certificates that have been issued in celebration of the practice. There's a few quotes from lawmakers over the years. This is Representative Patrick Ryan, a Democrat from New York, saying, "I am proud to recognize World Falun Dafa Day and commend the many individuals in our community who continue to share its values and traditions." This is from Representative Chris Smith, a Republican from New Jersey. "I want to thank you for your perseverance. We stand in solidarity with your right to practice as you see fit."
And here's Republican Senator from Texas, Ted Cruz. "I unequivocally denounce China's inhumane treatment of Falun Gong practitioners. I am proud to stand with you." And Democrat Senator from Delaware, Lisa Blunt, "I wish you all continued success and hope that today's recognition is uplifting, empowering, and continues to advance the principles of Falun Dafa." So, although the practice and its adherents have faced nearly 3 decades of communist persecution, which continues today, as you can see, these practitioners have overcome a lot. They've exposed the CCP's crimes and gained the support of many in the U.S. and abroad. Back to you, Steph.
Yeah, great to see all of that information and also how much of a bipartisan issue it is to really tackle this persecution, even here on U.S. soil. Cynthia, tomorrow Congress will host a hearing on forced organ harvesting by the Chinese Communist Party. What's the latest on this issue?
Yeah, so interestingly, tomorrow's hearing, we actually submitted, my team, the Falun Dafa Information Center, actually submitted a written statement for it. And there's a lot going on, a lot of progress being made. There's at least 6 state laws that we've seen that target forced organ harvesting, and there's also 8 international laws that do the same thing. But right now, federally in the US, there isn't that law yet, and I think we're a little bit behind the curve in that sense. And so in our testimony tomorrow, we actually state that the Senate bill S 4009 should be marked up as soon as possible before August, before the midterm elections and everything ramp up there. It's called the it's called the Falun Gong Protection Act. There's also one called Stop Forced Organ Harvesting Act, and it's being unanimously supported in the House, so the Senate just has to act quickly on it. And also yesterday I was in DC, and so many lawmakers and so many experts are still finding out now, 20 years later, that organ harvesting is a thing in China. And I think this new book, China's War on Faith, by Ambassador Sam Brownback, that just released this week, reveals a lot that regular Americans can learn about. There's one particular portion that I wanted to read. It reads, Falun Gong offers something that the Chinese Communist Party cannot give its citizens in a million years, their old civilization. As much as the CCP demands sinicization of religion, communism is the real carpetbagger, a failed ideology that was born in 19th century Europe and has no natural connection to China. And there's no doubt in my mind that if there were fair and free competition for the hearts and minds of the Chinese people, Falun Gong will prevail in a landslide. One day, the CCP will come crashing down. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day. And when that day comes, the Chinese will have their great civilization once more.
Yeah, very inspiring by Ambassador Brownback, who has been, for Falun Gong and many other persecuted people, just a real champion of human rights, and his words are very inspiring. With that in mind, Li Shai, I want to come to you because Shen Yun displays these scenes that are actually happening in China, which are really unimaginable, but when you see them portrayed on stage, this black market in organs, I just want to get, like, how do audiences respond, and how has that experience been of portraying that really around the world?
Yeah, our audience members tend to view these dances as some of the most memorable and touching and inspiring. So a Shen Yun production, just to give a context, is about 20 dances and musical, instrumental solos, singing solos, each about 4 or 5 minutes long. Some are stories, some are ethnic dances, different dynastic traditions. You kind of go through this journey of 5,000 years of Chinese civilization. And as part of that, we include what's happening in China today, the story of the persecution of Falun Gong in China, which is very close to our hearts. Actually, in our company, we have more than 90 performers who've been directly impacted by the persecution. We have people who lost parents to torture. We have people who spent years in jail, were just roaming the country, evading police for years, have family members in jail still. And so this is not a remote human rights issue for the people who are performing, many of them American citizens by now, in Shen Yun. This is a personal family story for them. And so on stage, we depict not just the persecution of Falun Gong in China, but the beauty of the practice and the courage of the people resisting peacefully the persecution for all these years. And when audience members see it, we can see them from the stage. They're wiping tears the entire time. And when they go on camera and talk about the show, that's often the most touching and most memorable for them.
Yeah, it's remarkable how peaceful this movement is despite how painful it is. And it's remarkable that the persecution is still going on today. And at the same time, so many people don't even know much about Falun Dafa itself. But these parades provide such a beautiful opportunity to inform the public about this faith. Cynthia, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I really related to what Li Shai was saying, because there's this point that I wanted to make in parades and in speeches and rallies. You'll often see Falun Gong practitioners as human beings. They had families before the persecution. They had their own lives in China before the persecution. And right now, even though it's been temporarily stopped and halted, they will have a life after persecution. And as American people and as activists, we must make sure that they have a life after the CCP's persecution, because it's just unfathomable how many millions of people's lives, their neighbors, their coworkers have been affected by this. And I think the parades you'll see today, there are banners that say Falun Dafa is good, truthfulness, compassion, forbearance is good. These are slogans that you can't see in China today. And I think it's so important to realize the privilege that we have as American citizens to be able to even display these on the street.
Yeah, it's so important to understand. Like when we send in America our warriors over the course of these military campaigns, these people come back with PTSD and there are resources for them. But then in China, these people who have been subjected to torture and even more vile things, there's no support system for them. But through the practice of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance in their own community, they are able to rehabilitate from unimaginable experiences. And that's why we're celebrating today. And for those who are just tuning in, this is the World Falun Dafa Day Parade. And very shortly, the parade is going to kick off. They start off just by the United Nations and they end on the West Side Highway, right in front of the Chinese consulate, sending a very beautiful message, of course. But we're going to continue our conversation with the context around today. And Lishai, with that in mind and what Cynthia shared about the suffering of the people in China, it's even more unimaginable that these attacks are not specific to mainland China, but the communist regime is actually launching these throughout the Western world, using our open society against us, something at NTD that we report a lot on. But at Shen Yun, you have been targeted and the company has been targeted. Maybe you could share a little bit about what you've experienced and sort of how that manifests.
So Shen Yun was established in New York in 2006. It's a US-based company. We're a couple hours from here from your headquarters. And the mission of the company is to show China before communism, to bring back the traditions of China before it was destroyed. And part of that is telling the story of Falun Gong and the persecution. And so Beijing, the Chinese Communist Party, and their embassies and consulates all over the world really, really don't like that. They don't like that we're showing the tyranny of the regime, that we're showing what China could have been like without the Communist Party, what it could be like without it in the future. And so from the very beginning, when Shen Yun was established, they tried to stop us. And they changed tactics over the years. And it goes anything from diplomatic pressure to tire slashing to cyber attacks to spies that are now in jail that were caught by the FBI. And the last 2-3 years, we've really seen an escalation of this. We're getting regular death threats, bomb threats, rape threats. We're seeing a lot of disinformation in media. And so people will see articles in the media and not know that actually this is, if you pull on that thread, it goes all the way back to the Ministry of Propaganda back in Beijing that crafted this theme. They're controlling a lot of what we see on YouTube, obviously TikTok. And so we're facing this massive disinformation. It's trying to tell us here in America what we can and cannot watch, what we can and cannot believe, what information we consume. And this is a big problem. Just like organ harvesting, we learn about it because of what's happening to Falun Gong practitioners in China, but it has since spread to other groups as well, most notably to Uyghurs, and his new book about that by Ethan Gutman talking about that. And we've said from the very beginning, if you do not stop what's happening to Falun Gong, it's going to go to other groups. Same with this thing that we're now calling transnational repression. We were talking about this before that term was even invented. Back in 2002, I testified about this in Congress because we were seeing this already. And now it's spreading to other groups. And so you see censorship of Hollywood. You see NBA players being shut up, all because of the Chinese Communist Party. So what we're seeing here is kind of the tip of the spear, and we're fighting this massive attempt, this kind of blueprint that the Communist Party has to control what we think and do and believe here in America.
Yeah. And you appear in our NTD's documentary Unbroken, the Untold Story of Shen Yun, and that covers a lot of what you've just spoken about, biased reporting by the New York Times. There's also lawfare against Shen Yun, which is tied to Beijing. How has your faith helped you and others to get through this?
Well, first of all, congratulations on that documentary by NTD and what is it, Sincere Studios? Is that the name of the studio? Really amazing job. I went to the premiere. It was wonderful to be there and see people's reaction to it. I think for myself and for a lot of the Shen Yun performers, people ask us, how do you put up with this pressure? You're getting death threats and bomb threats and you still go on stage. And I think it's because our faith is what's driving us in terms of what we're doing. We believe that there are higher powers at play. We believe that good is rewarded. We believe that having a moral compass and doing what we think is right is more important, and you need to overcome fears. We do take our safety very, very, very seriously. We have, canines making sure that the theaters are safe. We have security around our buses. We do all these different things on the surface to protect ourselves, but we also have this ultimate faith that we will succeed. And also we think about the people in China, like I mentioned earlier. We think about what they're facing, and what we're facing is nothing compared to that. And we're motivated by the idea of performing in China someday, and really and we get emails from China all the time. I just got one the other day saying, when are you coming to China to perform? We can't wait for you to be here. So we know the people there are on our side, and we can't wait to bring it to them, and that keeps us going.
Yeah, that documentary, which you are in, is truly remarkable. The narrative arc of two brothers who are not even fully ethnic, they're half Chinese, and they switch from Western sports, baseball, and they become professional dancers, and it follows them. It's really heartwarming, particularly as a father, when those threats of abuse against women, and you're doing a press conference, just receiving that, and how under such incredible pressure, the company is able to not only perform, but to thrive. And that Unbroken documentary has received 1 million online streams since being released. And we would recommend to all of our audience, when the parade is over at 12:30, go to our website, watch Unbroken. You will love it. It's an amazing story. And next, we're going to go back to our NTD reporter, Flora Hua. She's got another sneak preview of the parade for us. Something really fun, I'm sure. Flora, what's happening this time?
Yes, Carrie, the parade is about to start in any moment. And I have a special team for you, the Taigu drummers. They are students from Northern Academy from upstate New York. And hi, guys. Let's give our audience a little performance. Ready? Let's go. Let's do it. Wow, how amazing was that? And I talked to one of the Taigu drummer earlier. His name is Michael Chen. And yes, let's see what he can tell us. Hi, Michael.
Hi, how are you?
So, are you excited for the parade?
Very excited. A little nervous too, actually, because performance, but very, very excited.
You guys sounds amazing. And tell us, how long have you been doing this?
Me, personally, I've been doing it for only about a year, but they've been doing it since like 2021, actually.
Wow, so 5 years now. And tell us, so what inspired you to join this parade today?
Well, for me personally, I just want to spread the positivity of Falun Dafa. When we play our instruments, we're indirectly expressing our inner selves as well. And our inner selves, we cultivate Falun Dafa, so we're also improving our inner selves. So I'm hoping that by playing the drums, we can sort of indirectly express how we Falun Dafa practitioners are like as well in drums. Like, it's a very nice beat too, so it's a beautiful positive energy for all the people watching as well.
And how long have you been practicing Falun Dafa?
Me? Well, I practiced when I was a little kid actually. My parents introduced it to me, but after a while when I really started reading it, and that's why gained improvement, was about, I guess when I was in a school student, and ever since I just stuck with it then.
That's really amazing. So many people, just like Michael here, they're here to celebrate their faith, Falun Dafa, and it's just the excitement here is really great. For now, back to you, Carrie.
Thank you, Flora. So amazing to see all those students practicing their drums. You know, I think about that, and Cynthia, maybe you can relate, because he was saying that he started practicing because his parents practiced, but there was kind of a tipping point for him, because a lot of people are born into things and they do it and then they sort of, go in their own way, but not you and not that very enthusiastic drummer. So what's that experience like for you?
I mean, I think for me, it was actually a lot of people of faith can relate to this, but when you're young, you just follow in your parents' footsteps. And for me, that just meant every weekend we would go to the Chinese consulate to appeal for an end to the persecution. In the summers, we would come to DC and appeal for the end of the persecution. And basically, after I went to college, that was when things really changed for me, because I was completely independent. There was no meditation with my mom in the morning. There were no people around me that I could share my experiences with. And in college, it really became my North Star. Like, it really became applicable of like, how do I use these three principles, truth, compassion, forbearance, in my schoolwork? How do I become a more truthful person? To some people, that's obviously procrastination or plagiarism. To me, it just meant being responsible for myself, setting up like timetables, and then being compassionate to others. Like if my friends had difficulties or if I got in arguments or disagreements, it was like about teamwork and persevering through all 4 years of undergrad. So it really became something that I could apply to my daily life.
That's fantastic. And you hear about a lot of people, they get that freedom, that taste of freedom when they go out of the nest, and they just kind of go off the deep end. And it's very inspiring that you use that as a way to sort of guide yourself into adulthood. And to go to the other side of the spectrum, you are a parent, you've got small children at home. Every parent knows how challenging. It feels like there's just, with all these modern conveniences, it's supposed to create time, but somehow we're all just rushing around. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of pressure for parents out there. How does Falun Dafa help you as a parent, Li-Shai?
Well, certainly the forbearance part is one that we get to practice daily.
That's your second time coming back to the forbearance part.
It comes up pretty easily, I think for me the challenge is more how do I introduce the practice to my kids in a way that they can relate to. So we meditate together as a family, and we do a shorter version for them, and hey, your eyes are open, keep your eyes closed if you can, and we do these kinds of things. But sometimes they will shock me because they will read the teachings with us and kind of understand that their Chinese is way better than mine. And they'll say things sometimes that show they actually have a much deeper understanding than I expected. Even at 7, 8, 9 years old, and they'll say something, well, I can't do that because that's not truthful. I'm going to do it this way. And I think, wow, in many ways, the innocence that they bring to it is such an advantage. I picked up the practice later in life, in my early 20s, after a spiritual quest of trying many different things. And by then, I already experienced a spectrum of what it is to be in society. Everything that there is to experience in your early 20s. And so for me, there's a lot of undoing of bad habits, undoing of notions and perspectives that are already developed. For a young child, when you come into the practice, you can actually approach it with this childlike innocence, and I think it really resonates with them. And they have their own kid way of doing things, but as a parent, I think it's really a nice anchor for the family.
I love that. And I myself experienced that just yesterday, where my son brought home some good grades and one very, very bad grade. And we had to have a conversation about it. And I told him it really didn't matter what the grade was. It was about his character and how to, now that we have a bad grade, what do we do next? And I really feel like it's those principles that really help me to have compassion, but also explain that it's really about, it's not the grade that matters, it's the effort. And it's the approach to life, because we're not going to be great at everything, but we can all have better character, and we can all try to improve our character just a little bit every day, get a little bit better. And so with that, we do have a video message from former NBA player Enes Kanter Freedom. The former Boston Celtics center has been a vocal advocate for human rights issues in China, and he's spoken up against the CCP's persecution of Falun Gong practitioners, as well as Christians, Tibetans, and Uyghurs. Freedom attracted attention for wearing shoes during his NBA games with various slogans, such as Free China, Free Tibet, and Stop Organ Harvesting in China. He also called out the NBA for cozying up to the CCP. Freedom says he has no regrets, despite being sidelined by the league due to his activism. Here's the message that he sent in for today.
It's the World Falun Gong Day, and I just want to, give a shout out to all these brave Falun Gong, my brothers and sisters. I want to call them my brothers and sisters because they're like a family. Everywhere I go, they show so much support. So I want to say, appreciate it, stay strong, be brave, and I don't care who you're fighting against. Just go out there, do what you do best, and stand up for what you believe in. So I just hope that see you all at one of my games in the future if China ever stop doing business with NBA.
Yeah, he's been such a great advocate. And considering where this has all come from the early days, very much clamped down on in China, and people around the world really knew nothing about it, to now we're having people like Enes Kanter speaking out about it. What does that mean to you, looking at that trajectory, Cynthia?
I mean, I've known Enes Freedom for a while now. He's been such a supportive and caring person. I mean, I know he's very tall, but he also has a big heart as equally as he is tall. And yesterday, when he was speaking at the Hudson Institute, he actually mentioned that he gave up tens of millions of dollars by speaking out against the CCP. When he spoke out against Turkey, his teammates, which he considers his brothers, were all supportive, but as soon as he talked about China, everyone turned their backs on him. And he even talked to Adam Silver, who actually admitted that, you know, he was doing the right thing, but the NBA couldn't publicly support him because the CCP's tentacles really spread far and wide. It goes into Hollywood, it goes into sports, it goes into more industries than I think most Americans realize. And I think that's the danger because, you know, you were mentioning earlier about like the grades are superficial. I think in Falun Dafa, we believe that as well, that there are more things than materialism. There's like a higher power. We believe in a creator. We believe that doing good things brings you virtue and brings you a better future, and that creating karma causes a bad future. And so I think if you just look at it from a higher angle, then you'll actually see that, you know, Enes is the one that will have the last laugh in the end and not the NBA, because he's actually standing up for what's right.
Right, that virtue that he's gaining is more valuable than short-term money, right? That, you know, is fleeting, and he seems to really embody that. Character is really, there's something more important than money or getting a spot on a team. You know, Alicia, I'd love to get your reaction to that, because Shen Yun, as you travel around, you see maybe people not quite as famous as Enes Kanter, but people that put aside short-term gain. They're getting carrots and sticks from the consulates. There's pressure on them. And many of them do the right thing, and they come out and they very publicly, like that, support Shen Yun Performing Arts and Falun Gong. What are some of the anecdotes that you've seen in your years traveling around the world?
Yeah, so the typical scenario is a theater that we're going to perform in, get a letter from the Chinese consulate or Chinese embassy saying, hey, in the interest of Chicago-China relations or Moldova-China relations, cancel the Shen Yun shows if you know what's good for you, and thinly veiled threats. And they of course, smear us and say that we're anti-China, even though we're showing Chinese culture. And I remember one case in Little Rock, Arkansas, where the Chinese consulate in Houston, they tried to pressure the theater to cancel the show, and the theater manager said, this is the United States. You're not going to tell us what we can and cannot watch here. And he went public with it. And we actually know that almost all the theaters get these, politicians get these, and often they will send us the letters. I think it's really a matter of having a spine. And yes, there's the carrot and stick, and they're trying to threaten you. But in reality, if you stand up to them, they really don't do very much, if at all. But we do see some countries that are more susceptible to corruption, South Korea, Eastern European bloc, that can be affected by this. And they put their material interest ahead of their moral conscience. And they say, we're sorry, we don't like to do this, but you know, we have to consider our business. And I think it's a choice that everybody faces. Whether you're an NBA star or a Hollywood producer or a theater manager, you have to choose for your future and to do what you think is right, and think about your legacy and how you're going to face your kids and your grandkids in the future. And what did you do when Falun Gong was persecuted, when the Chinese Communist Party was going around the world spreading lies and not only killing millions of people in China, but trying to promote its line around the world and shut up people about it? What did you do? So I think that's a choice that everybody has to face.
Yeah, people at all levels making choices, and so often making the right choice and a good choice to support human rights around the world, because it's actually not just in China. There's all kinds of transnational repression now as well, which we'll continue on with. But a large portion, and where it becomes really loudest, we can see in lawmakers right here in the US. We've already spoken a little about that, but we are getting a video message from Congressman John Moolenaar, chairman of the House Select Committee on the CCP. He founded in 2023. The committee is committed to building consensus on the threat posed by the Chinese Communist Party and to developing a plan of action to defend the United States. Since serving as chair in 2024, the congressman has been vocal about the CCP's human rights abuses, including its persecution of Falun Gong practitioners. Here's his message.
Hi, I'm John Moolenaar, and I just want to wish our friends a happy Falun Dafa Day. We respect your rights of freedom of religion, freedom of conscience, respect your values of tolerance and respect for one another. I believe in the commandment that says, love God, love one another as you would want to be loved. And I just appreciate celebrating this day with you.
As you said, Steph, it's so nice to see lawmakers just shielding themselves from that pressure from the CCP, which, unless you faced it, you don't really know how hard it is. But taking such a public stance like that, of course, we appreciate his support and the important work that working committee is doing on Congress. And to that end, I know you're very involved, Cynthia, in all of those things. You mentioned the Falun Gong Protection Act, as well as other things. What is your reaction to that video from the chairperson there?
I've just been such a big fan of him, so I'm a little bit swooning right now hearing him speak for this celebration. And earlier you were talking about, resisting the CCP and Li Shai as well. I think what American people and what people around the world need to realize is that economic benefits, material benefits are hollow and temporary. But if you really stand up to the CCP and say, Falun Gong is good, truthfulness, compassion, forbearance is good, the Creator does exist, these types of things are enduring and permanent, and they will leave a legacy on history. So I think in terms of the celebration today or future events, I think if more lawmakers could see that, and if more American people and people around the world can see that, then we might see the CCP stop sending threats to Shen Yun. We might see them actually stop trying to manipulate social media engines and platforms.
You don't need to be the first anymore, right? People have already stepped forward, like Enes Kanter Freedom and John Molinar. Now it's just easier to sort of follow the path that's being blazed. It's a really important point.
Certainly so. And to see more about the positive effects of Falun Dafa on practitioners' mind and body, next we'll tune in to our reporter Sherry Ning. She's joined by a Falun Dafa practitioner right now who can share a bit of her own experience with us. Sherry.
Hi, Steph. That's right. I'm here with Milan Fernandez. She is a writer and artist, and she is also a practitioner of Falun Dafa for 26 years. Now, Milan, thank you so much for being here with us. I understand that you have been practicing Falun Dafa since the year 2000. Now, can you tell us a bit about how you came upon this practice and what made you want to decide to start practicing it?
Glad to share. At that time, I had just recently moved to Vienna, and I reconnected with a friend of mine who was in London, and she told me about the practice. And when I heard her say Falun Dafa, I got really excited, because since the time I was 15 years old, I had always been searching for a spiritual practice. And somehow deep down, I knew that this was it for me. I had tried many different paths that had fizzled away in my life, but this kind of really resonated with me. Now, initially, I started reading the main book of Falun Dafa, Zhuan Falun, and because of my education, I had developed the habit of very critical thinking. So when I was reading Zhuan Falun, I was trying to find the catch. And the first time I read it, I didn't quite get it. I'm like, I'm not sure if I can practice this. So I read it a second time, trying to find the catch. Then I read it a third time. I kept reading and reading. I never found the catch, and I realized that this is a very profound book. And I had been reading it for 8 months, and then my friend came from London all the way to Vienna to teach me the exercises. And when she taught me the exercises, my whole body started tingling, especially when we were doing the fifth exercise, sitting in lotus position, the meditation exercise. And it's been 26 years, and I keep practicing every day and reading the book every day, and I'm incredibly, incredibly grateful.
Wow, what an experience. And over the years, as you continue to practicing it, did you notice any impact that the practice has had on you?
Overall, it's practicing Falun Dafa has given me an incredible sense of peace, courage, and the conviction to want to become more self-aware and a better person. And that means being truthful in my thoughts, in my actions, being compassionate towards myself, towards others, having forbearance, having tolerance and patience. And now we know in the world there's a lot of turmoil and difficulties, but despite that, deep down, I feel this incredible sense of wonder and gratitude just to be alive. And I have the compassion for people, nature, animals, things, everything, for life in general. So it's been it's been incredible. Really, really beautiful, wonderful practice. Yeah.
And when we were talking earlier, you mentioned that the practice also helped resolve some of your family conflicts, actually. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. So some of my relationships have been really harmonized, especially my relationship with my sister. When we grew up, we hated each other. We were fighting all the time. I felt she was such a bully, and we didn't talk for years. And gradually, after I started practicing, I started to look inside and started inside myself trying to find the ways of tried to understand her point of view, and I started to open up to her, and all the resentment that I had towards her dissolved. And now we have a very loving relationship. We talk on the phone frequently all the time. We support each other, and it's just wonderful. And yeah, that's and many other benefits. Also, it's given me a lot of energy in my body. I feel younger than I did 20, 30 years ago. It's really incredible. Yeah.
That sounds fantastic. A lot of positive impact indeed. And I want to ask, we know that Falun Dafa originated from China, but you actually learned it in Vienna, and we're celebrating it today in the United States. What do you think it is about the practice that's made it so popular all around the world despite language and cultural barriers?
Yes, actually that's something that really appealed to me about the practice, that it's open to people from all cultural backgrounds, all ethnicities, all races. It's very open, it's very flexible, it's free. You can practice at your own pace and incorporate it into your daily schedule and live your life as usual. So that I found very appealing. And because it's founded on these universal principles of truth, compassion, and tolerance, those are universal principles. So naturally, it resonates universally, and it's spread through word of mouth, naturally, because it's so good and beneficial.
Very insightful. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us, Milan. And back to you in the studio.
Thank you so much, Sherry. What an inspiring interview there. And Milan is a leading figure within the arts community here in New York City. I know she's done a lot of work over at the Grand Central Atelier, which is very much focused on classical realism. So to hear how it's benefited her, she shared a lot of things about her experience reading the main text, Zhuan Falun. She talked about the feeling her body gets of lightness. And I think you and I had the opportunity, since we were off from NTD Good Morning, to do a bit of exercise before we started. And yeah, it brings such a calm to your body. And then you get a collection of people who are all doing that, all gathered in New York City for this big parade. And there is quite a powerful experience on the street. And we're just about to get the parade to reach our spot. They should be arriving any moment. The parade is on its way through the streets in New York. But Cynthia, I want to read this statement from a London-based human rights activist, Benedict Rogers. He describes that feeling of experiencing in person one of these parades. And he said, "The array of color, beauty, and art that always epitomizes your celebration of this day during your parade and rally is inspirational. And your values of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance are values truly to celebrate. For these are values not only of Falun Gong practitioners, they are my values as a Christian. They are the values of friends of other religions. They are universal values. They are the values of humanity." Wow. Cynthia, I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, that actually, sums up Falun Dafa more beautifully than I could have put it. Falun Dafa, genuinely, when you, I guess, literally translate it over to English, some may translate it as the great law of the universe, or the great cultivation law of the universe. And so I think when you talk about these principles, it's relatable to everyone. Like, who hasn't had a disagreement with their sibling or had a difficult situation and they were like stuck between a rock and a hard place? I think everyone has that experience as human beings. And so as human beings, these principles really do help guide you. And I don't know, like when you see the parade, maybe you'll feel it for yourself.
Shai, your thoughts on Benedict's words?
Well, I think when people think about Falun Dafa or Falun Gong, they often think about the news and human rights atrocities in China and organ harvesting and the Chinese people sitting in front of the consulate. And I think what the parade really shows and what his quote there shows is this is actually something that was about self-improvement, about people finding peace, about people finding a way to improve. And you have such different people like Cynthia and myself and the people that we're seeing in the parade with very different backgrounds, and all the people in China. They weren't looking for a fight with the Chinese Communist Party. They were not looking to be political activists or, going to Congress to talk about a resolution. They wanted to meditate in a park and find inner peace and find a way to harmonize their family and get better health and have a sense of purpose in life. And I think that is something that everybody is looking for.
I would also like to add that Falun Dafa answers questions about the universe and about human life that communism cannot, that secular society cannot. And so that's what the Chinese Communist Party is really afraid of, because it can't deny the existence of a creator. And so there's just a lot of logical fallacies in the persecution. There's even an anecdote that I read that the CCP claims the three principles are actually truthfulness, compassion, and beauty, which is completely false. They try to twist the actual meaning of Falun Dafa because they can't argue against it. So I just wanted to add that bit out.
Yeah, certainly communism, a strange European import to China, only been there for, I don't know.
100 almost?
Yeah, 100 years, but, we're talking about 5,000 years of culture and way of life, Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism. And on World Falun Dafa Day, it couldn't be more apropos that right now in Beijing, it's evening, and President Trump just touched down not too long ago, within a few hours, and he's going to be set to have his meetings with President Xi tomorrow. The significance, though, of President Trump, he is the first president to invite a persecuted Falun Dafa practitioner into the Oval Office. This persecution, of course, began in 1999. And just recently, in his first term, the very first president to publicly acknowledge, not behind closed doors, but to very publicly greet a persecuted Falun Dafa practitioner into the Oval Office. Love to get your reactions to that, Cynthia.
Yeah, since Trump won, not only has he invited my dear friend Yu Hua, whose husband was actually sentenced for 10 years in prison just for his faith, he also put the money where his mouth is. He actually sanctioned for the first time Chinese officials who were involved in persecuting Falun Gong in China. And after him, Biden followed the precedent. And right now we're still waiting for sanctions during Trump's second term. But our organization, talking about the summit in China today, our organization actually submitted 2 recommendations to the White House and the Department of State to add to the agenda, one of which is to end transnational repression, because that is a national sovereignty issue. It's a national security issue for America. And number 2 is to actually free political prisoners. Their families, some of which are U.S. citizens, are here. They've been legal citizens, and in China, they're being persecuted. And so that's something that President Trump can actually help with. Yeah, the timing of this, you couldn't make it more uncanny. It's World Falun Dafa Day, and we're here to celebrate. And of course, the parade has reached our spot. We're looking at the very front of the parade. Behind that sign that says Falun Dafa are thousands of people marching. Let's go live now. I think that is a familiar tune. Lishai, what are we hearing the band play?
I believe that is a tune for the song Falun Dafa Hao, which means Falun Dafa is good. And it's, I guess kind of close to an anthem of sorts. It's a nice, very catchy tune. And is this the Tianguo marching band, I believe?
It is.
Let's listen in. I believe that melody is Falun Dafa Hao, right? That's the refrain of this song if you were to hear the vocals to it. And that word, Falun Dafa Hao, just Falun Dafa is good or great, as a standalone thing, that's a great saying. But in the context of the persecution, to be able to say those words or hold a banner with that, what are those words? Why is that so important that they have a song that leads this grand parade, Cynthia?
I mean, to me, it really speaks to their courage, because in China, some of whom the parade participants have come from China and have that PTSD of holding up that banner because they were arrested for doing just that. To be able to come here and still hold that banner and stand behind your moral virtues and your beliefs, I think is an incredible thing. I don't know if it's proper to say it in this way, but it seems like a pilgrimage of sorts. They're not only carrying their own faith on their shoulders, but also their family's legacy. They're speaking out for the millions of people who can't speak out. And so this walk today really seems like a spiritual one, at least to me as a viewer here in studio. They're walking through these iconic landmarks and really saying to the world, we are here. Falun Gong is here. Like, Falun Gong is good. Stop persecuting Falun Gong.
Yeah, when you don't have something and then you gain it, you feel like with those American flags right behind the words Falun Dafa is good and holding the main text of Falun Gong, Zhuan Falun, it may seem ordinary to a Westerner, but for somebody who has their lives have been destroyed in their home country.
It's a dream.
And to come here and to be able to openly hold that banner. Li Shai, we also saw a sign that said, "Happy birthday, Master Li." Well, what is that in context to the parade?
Right, so the Falun Dafa Day, World Falun Dafa Day coincides with his birthday, the founder of the practice, Master Li Hongzhi. And so it's kind of celebrated in tandem as the beginning of the practice and his birthday. And getting back to the point about the Falun Dafa Hao, I mean, there are people in China who sacrificed their lives just to say those words. They held a banner that said Falun Dafa is good, and for that they were beaten to death on Tiananmen Square and other places throughout China. And one of the lies that the Chinese Communist Party has told the Chinese people is that Falun Dafa is banned all over the world. And I remember when I was in China, that's what the policemen were saying. No, it's banned everywhere. And we actually went to China to tell them, no, it's actually practiced everywhere. You're the only ones banning it. And so for people in China who can jump the firewall and see this parade and see people on the street freely with the American flags, people from all over the world saying Falun Dafa is good, that's a powerful message and of strong encouragement for them.
Yeah, and you can see right there the main book, Zhuan Falun, translated into so many different languages. I believe it's more than 50 languages by this point. And earlier we saw a banner saying, Dafa is the wisdom of the Creator. Cynthia, if you speak more to this aspect of why so many people cherish this practice and why they would risk their lives to make known that Falun Dafa is good.
Yeah, I mean, just seeing this parade today, I wanted to mention that in parallel, yesterday in Sydney, Australia, in Seoul, South Korea, in London, the United Kingdom, there are similar parades like this and celebrations being held in over 100 countries around the world. It is not just a China thing like Beijing claims. It's celebrated widely, and it really speaks to the universality of it. I think going back to the point we were making earlier, I have a friend who during COVID found the Falun Gong texts online and the meditation music online and learned it through COVID because there was nothing better to do. His school had stopped, his work had stopped, he was just staying at home, social distancing from the world. And the reason that people, no matter what ethnic background or whichever nationality, can relate is because, it really is the wisdom of the Creator. Like, the Creator exists, and a lot of people worldwide believe that humans were made by the divine, and that there is an element of fate that plays into it. And whenever you're going about the world, things are not a coincidence. There are things that lead one to another, and I think Falun Dafa really answers a lot of the questions that people might have.
And the practice continues to be accessible to people all around the world. If you're interested in finding out more, finding that text, Zhuan Falun, and having a read of it yourself, you can always go to falundafa.org and check it out for yourselves. All the exercises are there as well in video form, and there's music, and you can just get started right wherever you are.
And here's the dragon again. We met them earlier.
We sure did, yeah. When we saw it before, I couldn't see the full length of the dragon and the amount of core strength that does go into this, but you're right, it does look like it's quite a workout, Cynthia.
And you're walking down 2-3 miles, and you're constantly moving. They love, the kids just love the dragon, so they're always like going from sidewalk to sidewalk, greeting all the kids. So it's incredible with core strength. I really, props to them.
It actually takes quite a bit to carry those banners as well in high winds, I've just got to say.
Yeah, that banner reads, Falun Dafa is practiced in over 150 countries. And Steph,
right.
you were mentioning how the book of Falun Dafa has been translated into over 50 languages and practiced in over 150 countries. I don't know how many countries are, but it's pretty much in every single country.
Right. And if you think about it too, the way that I discovered Falun Dafa was just passing by some people practicing in a park in a beach that was right near my home. And this is the way so many people discover the practice. Back in China when it first came to the public, people came out into the town squares, people came out into the parks in the hundreds, and they were all gathering together for an hour or so in the mornings before heading off to work, and they'd just do the exercises together, feel that great energy, and be on their way, and come back day after day. And here's the book in Chinese, commonly in yellow, and the two colors that are quite prominent within the practice are blue and yellow, as you can see. But
I think the most remote place that I know have Falun Gong practitioners is Fiji. Wow. I don't know if any of you guys know, Southern Hemisphere off the coast of New Zealand.
Beautiful.
Yes, beautiful.
I think there's a water brand.
Yeah.
Sounds like it's a very pure place.
Exactly.
Good water.
Yeah, and the meditation is also practiced on the beach. So sometimes it's my dream when I travel to go visit places like that and meditate together.
Yeah, it's remarkable, the community that's just all around the world that really feels this sense of cohesion and belonging with each other and understanding this beautiful higher meanings. And that really speaks to the universality of it. It's so easy to catch on.
I gotta say, some of these people are quite handsome. I think that it's the health benefits of the practice. You notice they just tend to have a very dignified air. They're smiling. Even if they're on the older side, they have a vitality to them to be able to walk in the streets, basically from one side of Manhattan to the other side, carrying those sails basically that do get quite heavy when you're walking.
Yeah, as someone who did ultimate frisbee before, the wind looks to be about 16 miles per hour, so I would say that's amazing.
Miss NT, always surprising us. Ultimate frisbee, we can add that to her resume. I'll see you on the field, Cynthia.
Sounds good. You're going down, Carrie.
I actually think I want you on my side of it. I don't want to have to try to defend you.
Now, Lisha, I know you speak fluent Chinese, and we'll see many characters today, but truthfulness, compassion, forbearance will come up many times over. Tell us a bit more about the depth of these characters.
Right, so there it is. That's that banner now that's coming towards the front. You see the first character, Zhen, and the second character, Shan, then the third one is Zhen, which we'll see again soon. And what's interesting about these, so you can translate many different ways. Truth, compassion, tolerance is maybe the simplest, truthfulness, benevolence, forbearance. Each of these, you have many different interpretations. So truth, honesty, integrity, being truthful, compassion, being kind, good, benevolent, love even, and then tolerance, resilience. So the interesting thing is these words can be used in different ways as nouns. They can also be verbs, like I need to be more shan to somebody, or I'm more kind to somebody, right? Or I need to be able to tolerate something, right? We have different words for that in English, but in Chinese these can be adverbs even. Oh, you didn't do that kindly, right? But it's the same character in Chinese, and some people even translate as to be true, good, and endure. Like the whole thing is a verb. And so this is really, they're not just these theoretical principles. These are things you're supposed to put in your heart and check yourself constantly to see if you're aligning yourself to these values, because we believe they are the core characteristic of the universe. And when we're not in alignment with them, we are in discord with the universe, and that is not a good place to be. But when you can align with them, you actually can see the beauty of the universe. And it's not that you don't have karma and suffering and things like that. You do, that's part of life, but by aligning to these, you can be more in accord with the universe and you can elevate your soul.
I think there's also a point of having more love for each other as not only community members, but also as members of society, to have more love for the work that you do or the responsibilities that you shoulder, I think is also embedded within these three characters.
And we've seen a few times here a symbol, which is the law wheel, a visual representation of the laws of the universe as taught through Falun Dafa. And we've seen symbols that may be known to people in other contexts. The swastika, also known as the Srivatsa, which is an ancient Buddhist symbol, and the yin yang, also known as the Taiji, drawing on Taoist
there it is in the back.
Yeah.
So I've actually seen this a couple places around the world. I saw it in the Parthenon in Greece. In Athens, and it was actually we see it in theaters and decorations on theaters that were built 100 plus years ago all over the country. And when I was in Taiwan and in Hong Kong, when I was studying in Asia, this symbol was used, the central, what's called a one symbol in Chinese, is used to symbolize Buddhism. And actually, if you get instant noodles, ramen, I'm vegetarian, you get the box of noodles. If you want a vegetarian one, you got to look for that symbol which marks it as Buddhist and vegetarian. So it's a very different context from what we've seen, since World War II in the West. And this goes back thousands and thousands of years.
I went to the British Museum 2 years ago in London, and I kept looking for that symbol on the Buddhist statues. They have some from India, from China, from all around the world. And I think there was only one statue in the entire museum where I found it right in the middle of the forehead.
Wow, and oftentimes you will also see it on the chest when you see some Buddha statues. And speaking of Buddha statues, there are these drummers. They kind of remind me of those statues that are sometimes in some of the Shen Yun pieces. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
They look like heavenly guardians in a way. So what you see in Chinese history is that there's this concept of divinely inspired culture. And that's the idea that traditional Chinese culture was passed from the divine. It wasn't just created. You have different stories of how the Chinese characters that are written were passed down, how agriculture and Chinese medicine, how everything was brought down by different, like this demigod kind of culture. And part of that is the attire of traditional Chinese culture is supposedly inspired by the attire worn in the heavens. And so you have this connection between like these guardian warriors in Chinese folklore, in like Journey to the West, guarding the dragon king of the seas. And then you have this actually in Han Dynasty or Zhou Dynasty warrior attire.
And here we have the Fa boat, which is a common theme actually across so many Falun Dafa parades around the world. And you can see the law wheel there positioned at the top, the words Zhenshan Ren in the middle right underneath. And what's the phrase behind the car there? That
Pu Tian Tong Qing. That means just celebrating together globally, like under heaven, celebrating together. And the boat, of course, is such a metaphor for, especially in Buddhist traditions, of crossing over the sea of suffering to the other side where a greater future awaits you. And the idea of this being a vessel for your spiritual journey.
And what's really amazing about this practice, as we've spoken about, was really the first time within Eastern traditions when usually the spiritual cultivation ways were passed down from one teacher to one student. And suddenly, when Mr. Li Hongzhi came out to the public with it, it could be learned by anyone who wanted to practice. And suddenly everybody had a path back to heaven in a way, and to that inner spiritual ascension. And the beautiful thing here is we can see lotus flowers in many of the symbols here, symbolizing the fact that you don't need to leave the mortal world to transcend, to live from a higher plane.
And one of the things I think people often misunderstand about Falun Dafa and our relationship to Master Li is that, yes, we have a lot of gratitude to him for bringing this practice out and teaching us, and we very much respect the teachings and we use them as a guide in our spiritual life, but the practice itself is very internal, and no people have the same spiritual path, and it's about inner work. And it's about trying to align yourself with these principles. There's no worship in the sense that you might expect, in other contexts. It's very much an internal practice. It's very individual for each of the practitioners. All the millions of people around the world, they each have their own spiritual path.
And there's no church or any sort of tithing. It's a very different concept compared to Orthodox Western religions.
Yeah, maybe you could explore that a little bit, Cynthia. This concept of cultivation.
Yeah, I mean, I think in Falun Dafa, it's a dual cultivation system where you have the mind and the body. And so for the mind, as you saw in some of the parade floats that haven't come yet, there are people meditating, and I do it myself in the morning. And then you'll see people in Central Park meditating in the morning, and pre-persecution in China, you'll see thousands of people in Guangchang, which are like open public squares in China, practicing before work and before school. And then the second part of it is, so you have mind and body. So that was body. And then mind is internal cultivation, where you're trying to elevate your own moral values and then your own being. You're trying to be a better person day after day. And so it really is that moral compass of, am I more truthful today than I was yesterday? Am I more kind to my parents, my peers than I was yesterday? Have I tolerated more hardship? Can I tolerate more hardship? And how can I really build myself to be the ideal image of myself in the future? Because the little habits and the little choices that you make every day build up. And I mean, that's what I learned in working out as well. You have to build muscle slowly and slowly, and living life is also like building that muscle. You have that mental muscle of making the right choices day after day.
Right, you have your body, you have your mind, and then you have your spirit. And being able to work on all three of those things and actually strengthen your spirit through this process you're describing. And of course, that's what we're celebrating today. It's the World Falun Dafa Day, if you're just tuning in. And this is the beginning of the parade. There are thousands of people behind here. This is our shot right by Bryant Park. And to the left of these marchers is a building in New York. It's the Grace Building. And I think that word grace really kind of summarizes a lot of what you were just sharing, Cynthia, about needing more love in the world. And that can be cultivated little by little. You can become a kinder person if you work on it.
Yeah.
You can't just do it with the snap of your finger. And all of these people have benefited from that, and that's why they came out. And as we said earlier, last year in the pouring rain, they got a nice day today, not too sunny and burning their skin, not getting wet. And let's listen in now to the Tengua Marching Band.
Last year, I remember when it was raining, we kept saying it felt like seeing a rainbow in the rain. But this year, we finally see the true colors for what they are. And I was joking with you last year that as the tuba players were playing, they were probably blowing out water as they were playing. But yeah, that song was incredible. I can't believe how synchronized these people, because it's, what, 200, 300 people it looks like?
Yeah, and they're all practicing in their spare time, many of them picking the instruments up late in life, just to show their gratitude for the practice, to come out in parades like this and really share their faith and their joy with the world. These parades, as we can see here, full of those bright blues and yellow hues, very different from other types of Chinese parades, which often feature red. Talk to us about the differences here between traditional culture and the CCP's culture in terms of how it shows up in parades.
Well, that really goes back to the origin of Shen Yun Performing Arts, where I work, which, really the early iterations of the show were very much a call for, hey, let's have something that actually represents traditional Chinese culture for the Chinese New Year. Because at that time, this is like 2004, 5, and 6, the Chinese embassies and consulates around the world would put on their own production, and like you said, it was all red. You know, the Communist Party, blood red. Everything is red, everything is wonderful, glory to the Communist Party. And my Chinese friends who got me involved in this said, this does not represent us. It does not represent our culture, what we believe, where we come from. We don't agree with any of this. Let's have our own show. And so they brought just people from around the world who had some artistic background and started this early production, New Year Gala. We had one at Radio City Music Hall and Madison Square Garden before that. And what I noticed right away was all the colors. And the Chinese Communist Party likes to say that they've liberated China from its bleak and feudal past. But if you actually look at paintings, and we have them here at the Met, we have them all over the world, and you look at the Chinese dramas that were made, in free societies, you see it was very, very colorful, very bright, very vibrant. And so when you see Shen Yun performing arts, often the costumes are one of the things that people comment on the most. And our artistic director has really brought out these traditional designs and colors, and it's kind of shocking to the world. And fashion designers actually take inspiration from it. You start seeing it in stores. Oh, I can recognize that pastel color from our show. And so, it's not surprising to me that in a celebration of Falun Dafa, which in a way is connected very much to celebration of universal values and also something that was very traditional Chinese. As Cynthia talked about, the idea of cultivation and spiritual practices, right? Taoist traditions and these Taoist masters who would go into the mountains and seek the way, and Buddhist traditions, that you have all these different colors and these different themes.
Yeah, I want to touch on that because you mentioned how artists go to Shen Yun and they're inspired, and then you start seeing little seeds of it throughout society, whether it's in film, whether it's in fashion. And I think you could also say that about this practice in that, 20, 30 years ago in the West, nobody meditated, nobody did yoga, nobody was worried about health and wellness. And now, everywhere you look, people are so focused on wellness, and there are these meditation apps, and it's almost as if it's trend-setting Falun Dafa and sort of society, whether directly or indirectly, they're
ahead of the curve.
Yeah, they're inspired by it. Maybe you, being Miss NTD, of course, someone who's very on trend. How do you see that, kind of popping up throughout all the trends and the fashions?
Yeah, I think Falun Dafa really is about going to your original heart, going to your original place, and keeping everything natural. Whether it's your mind or your body, to keep everything natural. And right now we have this trend called crunchy moms. I don't know if you've seen that on social media, where
I personally haven't, but I'm sure my wife and daughter have.
If you're looking, some people are seeking non-toxic clothing,
yes.
non-toxic kitchenware. There's microplastic and everything, and Netflix even released a documentary called The Plastic Detox. And it's actually quite scary, the amount of plastic and the amount of chemicals, lead, asbestos that we have in our food. And so, when you see everyone here smiling, wearing bright colors, and with the natural beauty that they have shining from within, it really actually reminds you that, Falun Gong was here first, that, these values are universal and can help people around the world.
And there is a website and a resource called minghui.org is the website. You can go to it for a deeper understanding of some of the experiences of Falun Dafa practitioners, both through the persecution, but also their own improvements and their health benefits that they gained, character benefits to mind and inner peace. But also, Li-Shai, I know that you've through practicing and also through the artists that you work with at Shen Yun, face a lot of challenges. What role do the exercises play for you in benefiting your whole being?
Well, I think one of the things that people tell me when I come back from tour, we tour for about 4 to 5 months out of the year. And we perform more days than not. Sometimes we have 2 shows. And so actually I'm much better on tour about getting my meditation in, because I feel like to really have the best energy that I can have and the peace of mind that I want for performing on stage, the meditation really helps. Then I come home and I get really busy, and then everybody's starting to remind me, you look like you haven't meditated in a while. So when we're on tour, between 2 shows, we have a matinee in the afternoon and a show at night, you'll see the dancers on stage, the curtains down, just meditating. And it's very peaceful. There's a bit of music in the background, meditating for maybe 20 minutes, half an hour before they have dinner, take a nap. And that's just part of our routine. And it's something we do on show days, on non-show days. People meditate on the bus. There's not just a sitting meditation, there's standing exercises. Those are really great. If you're recovering from maybe an injury or if you're just kind of feeling low energy, they're really good for that. And I think, Carrie, you talked about, you got your mind and your body and your soul. I think bringing that back to your question about the trends that we're seeing now, I think in Falun Dafa we would say those are all related, right? Your mind, your thoughts are a frequency, right? They have a physical manifestation as well. And even scientists now are talking about they don't really know where the soul is. It may not actually be in the brain. They're not quite sure. And there's a lot of attention to these mind-body ideas and how they affect each other and affect your health and your well-being and your mental state, right? That's why so many people are doing gratitude, because it affects their health as well. And so I think people are realizing how, as we have all the technology and as we feel like we're so busy, but what are we really doing? There's a lot more attention to what is actually going on here. What really matters and how do these things affect each other?
Yeah, such a beautiful and apropos point as we're watching the World Falun Dafa Day parade go from one side of Manhattan all the way across 42nd Street to the other. And as you can see, the widespread appeal back in 1998, the Chinese state estimated that there were over 70 million people practicing Falun Dafa with no mass media promotion. Lishai, take us back to how the practice spread in those days.
It really spread from word of mouth, and so it was introduced in China in 1992 by Master Li Hongzhi, and then over the first couple of years, so he's from Changchun, which is in northeastern China, and he was invited to Beijing to give some talks then, and the Qigong Research Society, because it was such a big deal, they said, wow, you've answered all these questions about Qigong. Let's have you have your own part of the association and we will host you giving talks around the country. And so he went giving 50-something, I think it was 54, 9-day lecture series. And he would just lecture for hours and hours and hours about the principles of the practice, about what all the Qigong phenomena is really and what it's for. And people just came, and some people would travel from city to city, but a lot of people would just come to listen to the lectures, and those were the early Falun Gong practitioners. Then they would go back home to their town and introduce it to their family, and often they would see the health benefits that these people have, or how their mindset had changed, how calmer they were and more kind. And they said, wow, this is really great. I'm seeing the change in my mom or my dad or my sister. Let me pick this up as well. And a lot of people came with skepticism. They benefited from it. And then you have entire factories where everybody's practicing this. And they're saying, wow, these workers are amazing. They're not fighting. They're not stealing. They're just great. They work hard. And they all start practicing it. And then it gets to the point that, in fact, the Chinese government is giving awards to Master Li. The Chinese sports department is saying, this is saving us millions and millions of dollars in healthcare. And people are benefiting with like a 97.9 efficacy rate in their health. And just nationwide, you have these videos, you can still see them. I'm sure you guys have spotlighted this. From Shanghai and from Beijing, of state-run media praising Falun Gong in the late 1990s. And then they realized, wait, there's more people doing this than the Chinese Communist Party. And most people in the government, including many members of the Standing Committee, Politburo, said, that's fine. People can practice their faith and be Communist Party members even. There was not a conflict. But the head of the Communist Party at the time, Jiang Zemin, and a few of his supporters really felt this was a threat to the Communist Party, a separate ideology outside the party's control, and decided against the advice of many of the people in the government to ban the practice. And actually, before they banned it, they spent several years ramping up propaganda and spying and getting lists of people, because Falun Dafa does not have a list. And then when the crackdown started and evolved very quickly into brutal and very violent persecution, it was overnight. And they had all these pre-made movies and attacks, and it was 24/7. And they had these vehicles with loudspeakers driving around college campuses and around the main city streets saying Falun Dafa is banned, and not only is it banned, protesting the ban is also banned, and then there was nowhere to go. And then you have people being rounded up from their homes and sent to labor camps and prisoned and tortured and killed, and just this veil of propaganda and shutting up anybody who has a contrary opinion, very much like we've seen in other communist campaigns and in China over the years.
It's amazing that you talk about those early days, and it went from nobody practicing in 92, which is of course why we're having this grand parade, which is what we're watching here on the screen, is all these thousands of people coming to celebrate the public introduction of Falun Dafa Day, which is the birthday of its founder, Mr. Li Hongzhi. And it went from nobody to 70 million people, all through word of mouth. And the more that the Chinese Communist Party looks to suppress it, the more they promote it, in fact, because that's how I heard about it. I read about it in the Wall Street Journal. this writer, Ian Johnson, won the Pulitzer for writing about how these women were being tortured to death, but they would not give up this practice. And I thought, oh my God. And if they found it so inspiring, I want to just understand it. And I think that's what we see with Shen Yun. The Communist Party, while trying to suppress it, they're actually promoting it. It's sort of like this unintended consequence. And I'd love, Cynthia, for you to talk a little bit about the awards that Mr. Lee has gained. I know that he has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, and I'd love to understand, because in the early days, as Li Shai shared, he toured the country tirelessly, basically living out of a suitcase for 2.5 years. And that's why I think people want to wish Mr. Lee a happy birthday and to celebrate today as not just their gratitude for the practice, but also their gratitude to Mr. Lee.
Yeah, I mean, you can see on the screen right now that Mr. Lee was a 4-time Nobel Peace Prize nominee. I really think it speaks to the nonviolent aspect and like the peaceful meditation that he has taught to the world. I mean, imagine, back to the 90s, we're back to the 90s, if in America you're meditating in Central Park and NYPD shoot you with water cannons. Like,
unbelievable, unthinkable.
Yeah, and the day before you were meditating just fine. You weren't given a notice ahead of time. There was no social media post by NYPD, and they just come and blast you and your friends with water cannons. That's exactly what happened in China. And despite that, the practitioners have never acted or reacted in violence. In fact, some of the friends I know that have actually survived labor camps in China have actually had police guards in prison tell them they're sorry and to forgive them for the torture that they wrought upon the practitioners. And so I think it speaks incredibly to not only the energy of the parade today, but also the energy of the practice, which is transmitted today through the music, through the floats, through all of the different colors. I hope that people can actually take that with them, the nonviolent message.
And folks, you can continue to learn more about this persecution and this practice, of course, in so many ways. But there is another new book out recently by Epoch Times senior editor Yanya Kellick called Killed to Order. Really breaks down this phenomenon of organ harvesting, which, as we've mentioned, really targeted the Falun Dafa community, but has also spread to many other groups as well.
He's also testifying at the congressional hearing.
And he's testifying, that is right. And considering that President Trump will be meeting with Xi Jinping of China very shortly, Li Shai, how important do you think it is that the president address the persecution of Falun Dafa and transnational repression?
I think it's incredibly important. I think he will score many points long term with the people of China. And those are the people that I think the American people really care about. I think what we've discovered is that we don't have war between Americans and Chinese people, but the Chinese Communist Party in many ways has declared war on the United States. There's a book, The Red Tsunami, that just came out about this. Jan talks about these issues in his book, and it's many issues in terms of transnational repression. We're seeing this in terms of suppression of artistic freedom and freedom of speech here in the United States, but we're also seeing issues like fentanyl, like cyber hacking, like IP theft, and all these issues that affect so many Americans. And this is a Chinese Communist Party, but the people who've really, really suffered under the Chinese Communist Party are the Chinese people. And you cannot find a Chinese person who does not have a family member or friend who was murdered by the Chinese Communist Party over the last few decades. 80 million people. And so I think for President Trump, and there are many people in the administration, Secretary of State Rubio, who've been very outspoken about the persecution of Falun Gong for many years, it is so important to put this on the table and say, this is the biggest religious persecution of the 21st century. This is a huge atrocity, and you need to stop it, not just for the innocent people who are being persecuted, but also for the future of China. Because what a missed opportunity. You have all these people trying to be good people, trying to be healthy, and you decide to persecute them. And here you have Shen Yun trying to show the beauty of Chinese culture, and you try to stop it. The Communist Party is shooting itself in the foot with all these things. And so for President Trump to say, first of all, stop the persecution in China. Second, do not export your persecution and your Communist Party practices to the United States. This is America. You will not tell us what we can and cannot watch, believe, or say.
Yeah, I would like to add something briefly. You know, in our community, and I think in some human rights platforms internationally, some consider Falun Gong to be the pioneer and whistleblower on the CCP. We've been talking about transnational repression 25 years before the FBI published a page on transnational repression in September of 2024.
Wow.
We have personally experienced tires being slashed, guns being pointed to our heads in front of the consulate. This was in Canada 10, 15 years ago. And even like our families being threatened. I've received multiple threats via email to me and my family saying that we would die within the next few months if we weren't silent about the issue. So I think in terms of the broader issues on China, like you were saying, Li Shai, fentanyl, national security, the Indo-Pacific, if you understand Falun Gong, you will understand China. And if you're able to understand the CCP, know thy enemy, right? Like Sun Tzu said, then you'll be able to understand the motivations between why they want to take Taiwan, why they wanted and were so motivated to take Hong Kong.
And to that point, this aspect of truthfulness, you know, we've spoken a little about the wonder that you sometimes feel when you hear stories of practitioners facing persecution and how they stand firm and they do not veer from their faith, and making known that Falun Dafa is good and has benefited them. And you can be, you know, sometimes wonder why they would stand by that faith so steadfastly. But here we have the principles: truthfulness, compassion, forbearance. And it's really considered clarifying the truth, just letting people know what the truth is. Li Shai, tell us more about these symbols at the front.
Those are from left to right, Falun Dafa. So Fa means law or wheel. Law or way. Lun means the wheel. These characters each have different elements to them. Da is big, and then there's Fa again. Yeah, so Falun Dafa, that's, law, wheel, great law would be how you would translate. Falun Dafa and Falun Gong, people hear them interchangeably. We do use them interchangeably for the most part. And then you got the lotus flowers underneath that. The lotus is a symbol of something that can endure and arise pure. So the lotus grows in these kind of murky waters and greets the sun in brilliant, radiant colors at the top of it. So it's a symbol of overcoming adversity and maintaining your purity through it.
Yeah, what a great metaphor for the practice, coming out of the muck and all of the negativity and all the modernity that, you can very rarely get a moment of peace without a screen blinking at you. And then this lotus flower represents that you can, not externally, but you can look inside and you could rise out of the muck and you can purify yourself and you can find peace. And there's actually a book that explores this by Dr. Margaret Trey. She's written 2 books. One, The Effect of Falun Gong, and the other one, The Mindful Practice of Falun Gong. So you could easily search for her, Margaret Trey, and she actually interviews people from a medical perspective, and she documents the improvement that is experienced by people who do this practice. We saw one sign that said Falun Dafa exercises energize the body. And that's a very common thing that people describe. They feel calm, they feel peaceful, they feel light. And these exercises can be learned for free anywhere around the world or online. And that's why this parade exists, to give gratitude for the 34 years since Mr. Li Hongzhi made this practice public.
And we can see right in the distance some of the practitioners showcasing some of the movements. There are 5 different exercises. Some of them are still, one is seated, but the other 4 are standing, and they'll be demonstrating them by walking. But the actual exercises as they're practiced are just standing, slow moving, People, as you mentioned, Li-Shai, may have heard of Tai Chi, may have seen it, but not a lot of people know about Qigong. Tell us a bit more about that.
Well, that was actually my introduction to Falun Dafa. It was, you mentioned coming across the practice, I think at a beach, right? I came across it at a park in Tel Aviv, Israel, on World Tai Chi Day. And there were all these different people doing Tai Chi from different schools of practice from all over the world. And there was a Falun Dafa table there introducing the practice. I went over and they said, this is mind and body, and that's really interesting to me. And so that's how I picked up the practice. But yeah, you have Tai Chi, this idea of slow-moving exercises that are energy-based. And I think this is kind of how the West really learned about the Qigong boom in China, was seeing 100 million people in parks, you know, at dawn all across China doing these slow-moving exercises. And so when Falun Dafa came, a lot of those people started practicing Falun Dafa, and they said, this is actually what I was looking for. And so, you know, you kind of have to use your imagination a little bit because they're walking and doing the exercises. But imagine doing this in a park under the shade of a tree. That is really what Falun Dafa practitioners, I think if you ask most of them, that is what they want to do. They don't want to be out in front of the consulate trying to raise awareness about human rights issues. If they would love to just go back to a time where they can meditate at home, then go to work and have their, you know, their family life and everything, or go to a park and do it. And that's really what the practice at its core is about, self-improvement.
And there we see this group in yellow performing the exercises. Maybe, Cynthia, you could describe what we're seeing here on screen.
Yeah, this is the first exercise of 5. The first 4 exercises are standing, usually still, like Li-Shai was mentioning. And then the 5th exercise is usually done when you're sitting. And so this morning, actually, before the shoot, I was in the makeup room doing the 2nd exercise, which I think we'll see after this one. So it really is flexible. You can do 9 minutes of meditation in the morning. You can do 2 hours of meditation in the morning if you'd like. And so, as you can see, there's kids of all ages and also like older adults, each doing the exercise movements together.
What is that hand motion that they're doing now, Cynthia?
This is jieying in English.
Hands conjoined. Yeah, this is kind of our starting and ending position in almost all the exercises, and it's very peaceful.
So that first exercise, translated from Chinese, is called Buddha stretching 1,000 arms. This aspect of inner enlightenment is infused throughout everything in the practice. Some of the other exercises names are Falun standing stance, coming back to that symbol of the laws of the universe, the way that the whole universe works, being the Falun. The coursing between the 2 poles, which is all about mixing and merging the universe's energy with the energy inside the body.
Yeah, one thing that I noticed from those people demonstrating the first exercises, and as Cynthia put it, you could just do it in 9 minutes. And even just that first exercise, you can feel such a shift in how you feel. You don't go, your heart rate doesn't raise, you don't go jogging around the block or anything, but somehow you've unblocked the energy channels in your body and you feel warm and you feel more calm at the same time. It's a very unique experience, and only in 9 minutes you can have such a shift in how you feel.
I will do a 3-minute exercise during intermission during our shows. Just go into my dressing room and do a 3-minute exercise. I remember showing somebody back in college a couple plus decades ago, teaching him the first exercise, and he put his hands together in that conjoined hand position. He had tears in his eyes. I said, what's going on? He said, I felt like coming home.
Oh,
you reconnect with something.
That's it.
And we just saw Falun Dafa around the world in the parade. We saw from Mongolia, we saw from Spanish-speaking countries, and now we're seeing a particular type of dance here. What are we seeing on the screen here, Li-Shai?
That is a particular kind of dance, as you said very accurately.
They're wearing the lotus flowers as skirts. We were talking about lotus flowers earlier, and then they also have a headdress more commonly associated with ancient dynasty clothing. In palace maidens will wear it, and so they're really trying to show people the beauty of the lotus the beauty of ancient traditional culture.
I think the idea is they are lotus flowers, right?
Yes, yes. They're like lotus maidens.
So there's this concept, and you see this in Shen Yun too, of different beings can manifest in different forms. Like we had the dance this year about peacock paradise, where they manifest as heavenly celestial maidens, as young ladies, and they then transform into a peacock. I think something similar there with the lotus.
Yeah, we saw that with the lotus, we saw that with the dragon. What is it in Chinese culture about these sort of, and this is all in vogue with all the different types of comic book character movies, but this sort of like mythical creatures, what does Chinese culture, have about dragons and peacocks and such that you don't really see as much in our American culture?
I mean, I think it speaks to the semi-divine culture that Li Shai talked about earlier. Peacocks are also auspicious, just like dragons, and so most Chinese people believe that they come from the heavens. And so if there's a particularly auspicious moment or event, people will, say in history books that they saw a peacock coming to the palace during an event or during like a special occasion. And so they're kind of seen as these lucky charms that are looking down upon us. And there's also in history, these great sages, some of which have mystical powers like healing or, medicine, herbalists. And so I think you can see how the divine is interwoven with Chinese culture, and they were very methodical about recording all of the different myths and legends.
We've seen some of those in Shen Yun, right, Li Shai? Like people going to the moon and drinking elixirs and all different kinds of auspicious displays.
I think that the idea of form and spirit being more fluid, I think, and so not talking about people transforming into a werewolf or a were-rabbit or whatever, but more just the idea that you can have a spirit or a soul can take on many different forms. I think probably the story people are most familiar with is that of the Monkey King from Journey to the West, which we have in Shen Yun almost every year. And it really follows a handful of characters, a Buddhist monk and his bodyguards, the Monkey King, and there's Pigsy, who's a half man, half pig, and you have an ogre, and you have a horse as well, and they go on this journey, and even though the characters are so colorful and somewhat crazy, and they have all these antics and superpowers, it's really a spiritual journey. They go through all these tribulations of overcoming desires and difficulties and tests of faith, and can they overcome the hardship and complete their spiritual journey. And that is such a core book, which of course was banned during the Cultural Revolution by the Communist Party, but it's such a core book in terms of Chinese culture and some of these values. And you have Buddhist traditions and Taoist traditions, and that's why I think in our show we have it. And it's interesting because it's not just, it's got the spiritual message, it's very funny and entertaining, and kids love it because everybody likes the Monkey King, but it's also got this deeper message behind
this Journey to the West, it's almost sort of like the companion to, in the Western canon, the Odyssey and the Iliad, and sort of this connection to the divine. Maybe we could now transition to what we're seeing here on the screen, Cynthia.
Yeah, this one says Falun Dafa is good, and the bottom says truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance, one of the many translations that we've seen today. And then as you can see in the back, bringing it back to the Monkey King point and the myths, those banners that you see in the back that are blue and yellow, along with some of the drums earlier, are actually seen a lot on battlefields. So you'll see them talked about during the Three Kingdoms or other similar stories, that classics that most children actually were required to read pre-Cultural Revolution. And I think a lot of Chinese diaspora communities actually can see the photos of these types of flags in the cartoon books and in the storybooks out here, outside of China.
It kind of makes you think of a battlefield, but here you have these characters, truthfulness, compassion, forbearance, being emblazoned on these flags and really showing such a noble spirit as they go forth with that message. And this word hope also shows up a lot on the banners, and we've got it right there on our chyron. And really there's a sense of uplifting the world through these values that we speak, and we see a lot of Chinese culture here, but the values themselves really carry across all the cultures, and traditional culture is valued throughout the world through this practice. People who are practicing all around the world really looking back to their own cultures and seeing what of tradition they can learn to bring more harmony into their lives.
Yeah.
And
about the battlefield comment you made, I think it really does show the strength and the resilience of Falun Gong practitioners, because some may say that this is a battlefield currently for the hearts and minds of not only Chinese people, but also people of the world, because Falun Gong practitioners are standing up in a non-violent way against Beijing's propaganda, against the violent campaigns on their faith, and they're still not wavering, even after 27 years. This July will mark 27 years since the eve of the persecution, and I think the flags just make me so emotional, because you can kind of like hear the trumpets blaring, and you know the sound of the battlefield when they're carrying them. And this one says Falun Dafa Hao, Falun Dafa is good, carrying the same message behind, maybe like foot soldiers following the mighty steed in the front.
I think, Cynthia, when we see the parade, it's really hard to disconnect entirely from the context of the persecution in China. And you see these people standing up, and they're celebrating at the same time. I think in a lot of these people's minds, they have an awareness that they're also speaking for the voiceless in China. And I think for us here in the United States, you mentioned the Falun Gong Protection Act in the Senate. I think if people who are listening right now are motivated to do so, they can write to their senator and ask them to bring it up and get this going through Senate, because that has a real impact. It actually has abilities to curtail some of these things, to break off relations with doctors in China who are murdering people for their organs, to have some accountability, and to make sure that as Americans we're not complicit in these kinds of crimes against humanity happening in China right now. And that's something that we can actually do. We need senators on both sides of the aisle. It was passed unanimously in the House of Representatives. We need people in Senate to push it forward before it gets pushed aside and completely disappears, because this is ongoing daily in China right now, and it's something that if we're not careful, we will be part of as well.
Yeah, and I believe what we're seeing now with this procession of umbrellas, that's something that's deeply embedded in the culture as well. I know I've seen in Shen Yun performance, sometimes dancers do have a prop, and sometimes they do a dance with the umbrella. Is there anything you could share in that respect, Li Shai, about this sort? And it's so delicate. Look at that.
Yeah. So the umbrella or parasol for Chinese people, and I think throughout East Asia, is as much about sun as it is about rain. When I was studying in Taiwan, I would see boyfriends holding a parasol for their girlfriend over their head, and I'm like, there's no rain anywhere. What are we doing right here? It's just to keep the sun out of their face. And so it's a symbol of femininity. It's a symbol of kind of sophistication, and it can be used as a dance prop.
Always good to have a prop when you're doing a dance, right?
Right, and there's the Falun emblem with. We talked about the one symbol that is very much of the Buddhist tradition, and the Taiji symbols around it. We're used to the white and black ones. Here you have a red and a black and a red and a blue. And then you have characters on the sides talking about how the Falun wheel, this wheel, spins eternally, and the Buddha Fa, the way of the Buddha, is boundless, and so on.
What's very interesting about the Falun symbol is that it's circular in nature, of course. Anybody can see that's the most obvious component. But as I understand it, that's intended to be more of an emblem in a static figure. But the idea is that it's constantly in motion. And when I've seen some pictures of galaxies, it almost reminds me of this rotation. You see these amazing pictures that come out of like the Hubble telescope, and there's an odd similarity between that symbol and what you see when you see these big celestial bodies. And I always am amazed by that it's quite familiar, even though it's unusual in its presentation.
Yeah, what Li-Shai was saying earlier, I wanted to add that, it's two parts of the same system, the Taoist and the Buddhist. And in Falun Dafa, we believe that the Falun emblem can spin counterclockwise and clockwise, and it is a miniature of the universe. It's a little bit of a symbol of the larger universe.
And I mentioned earlier the minghui.org resource. They've got a banner, and here we have the Tui Dung Center represented. Now that is a peaceful worldwide movement for people around the world to quit the Chinese Communist Party, to remove their association from all of its horrendous deeds. And that is something that practitioners of Falun Dafa, I would say, believe would benefit anyone who does so.
That has got to be one of the biggest and least understood and known civil movements in the world right now. The idea of people in China and around the world symbolically renouncing their affiliation with the Chinese Communist Party and all their various organizations, including like the Young Pioneers and the Youth League, that they had as school children have to raise their hand to the Communist flag and swear their life to the Communist Party. And so this actually started around 2004, 2005 with the 9 commentaries on the Chinese Communist Party that the Epoch Times published. And it talked about the persecution of Falun Gong, it talked about the history of the Communist Party. So we see more of that right there. And then now, I'll get back to that in a second, but let's talk about Shen Yun dancers, celebrate World Falun Dafa. This is actually a clothing brand, Shen Yun dancer, which was inspired by Shen Yun Performing Arts and our costumes, and it's meant to be dance attire, casual wear, and so that's actually the clothing brand that came out of Shen Yun.
Yeah, so the chief designer of Shen Yun Dancer is the same artist.
That's right. DF, the artistic director of Shen Yun Performing Arts, has done so many other things as well. He designs all the costumes for the production, but also is the chief designer for Shen Yun Dancer and many other projects as well.
We've got Little Lotus Academy here.
Little Lotus Academy, I believe that is a school in Middletown, New York, where many Falun Dafa practitioners, especially ones who perhaps are affiliated with Shen Yun Performing Arts or the Feitian schools where these people train, because we're based out there. That's the area where I live as well. And so you have now a new generation of children looking for education, for wholesome education, and that's based in these values of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance, and that's a school that was started in Middletown.
And one of the ways that shows up is that it provides a liberal arts education grounded in moral integrity, virtuous habits, and a lifelong love of learning. And you've really got that classical education coming through in many ways as well.
And then just in front of that, we see the Sound of Hope group. They have a banner, and the Sound of Hope represents to me something that's just so miraculous about the will of these people. They're cast out from their own country, yet they want to form a media station to get information into China. So they're an internet-based radio and shortwave radio company that brings truthful information around the blockade of media that the communist regime has set up to enslave their own people, because information really is power, and they do that. Many of them work second jobs so that they can support Sound of Hope Radio, and they're broadcasting information into China.
And we also saw a banner there, the letters WOIPFG. That stands for World Organization to Investigate the Persecution of Falun Gong. It was founded in 2003. And
here you have, I think, banners. This is Falun Dafa in Changchun was the first one. Changchun in northeastern China is where Master Li is from. It is where the practice was first introduced, and is where many Falun Gong practitioners continue to practice still today in spite of horrible persecution.
Cynthia, on the significance of northeast China and Changchun, anything that you'd like to add?
I mean, I think what the World Organization has published about northeastern China has been extremely significant. A majority of the Chinese officials that they found evidence about their human rights abuses have been from northeastern China, and that's because, one, not only is the population greater there with Beijing, Tianjin, but also since it was, started and publicized in Changchun, in the northeastern part, a majority of Falun Gong practitioners in China are actually congregated around that region. And so you see some of the more notorious prisons and labor camps actually in that region as well. There's a great film called Letter to Ma Sanjia. It's an award-winning documentary about one of the prisons there that has seen hundreds of practitioners being detained and so many killed during custody.
Yeah, that film is so inspiring because it's the true story of a gentleman who was able to get a note out in the slave labor Halloween decorations he was forced to make in a labor camp. And that note made it all the way to Oregon. And the woman reported that to the authorities, and she even met the man who was able to get out of that very dark labor camp, Masanja. And it's an amazing film. But what struck me the most was there were interviews of the people who tortured him. And they had so much respect for this gentleman because of how great his heart was. He forgave them for torturing him. Letter from Masanja, a great film. Really glad you brought that up.
And just seeing there in the back, Tui Dang Center again represented. Folks, if you're learning more about the CCP today, makes you think more about quitting the CCP if you've ever joined up in your life, you can actually just go to tuidang.org and put your name down, or even put an alias down, and in some way really separate yourself mentally, perhaps spiritually, from the deeds of the Chinese Communist Party. But this organization really coordinates that global movement to help people quit the CCP. And it's grown rapidly since it began in late 2004. That was after the publication of the 9 commentaries on the Communist Party, which is also represented here. And that's a publication we encourage you to read as well if you want to learn more. That's accessible through the Epoch Times, which published it.
I'd like to understand that a little bit more, because you mentioned the Tui Dang and the quitting the Communist Party. Li Shai, why would a mainland Chinese person want to do that act? Like, what does it signify? What does it mean? We've heard that several hundred million people have already done this, but why? Why do they have to quit, or why do they feel compelled to quit the party? What does it symbolize? What's the effect? Why even do it?
I think it goes back to the idea of understanding that there's more to life than this material that's in front of us right now, which is what the Communist Party has been advocating. Utilitarianism, materialism, that only what you have right here in front of you is what matters, but you have a soul, and your soul has a future, and you want to make sure that you're clean in that way, and you're not affiliated with the Chinese Communist Party and all of its violence and all of its persecution, and its persecution of people who are trying to follow the principles of the universe. And you're going and you're killing these people for trying to be kind and compassionate and truthful and tolerant. And by disassociating with that, the idea is that you are no longer going to have the same horrible fate as the Chinese Communist Party does at the end of history, when it comes to there's a reckoning of sorts. We've seen what happened in the Soviet Union. These things do come to an end. Like somebody said earlier, we don't know if it's today, tomorrow. I think it was Ambassador Brownback. But it's going to happen. Hopefully in our lifetime, hopefully soon, there will be an end to the Chinese Communist Party. And as we saw with the Nazi regime, there is accountability for some of these perpetrators. And you don't want to be associated with that, be it a policeman who's tortured people or a neighbor who's turned in a friend. You want to make sure your conscience is clear for the future. And so these people in China often use their real name, and they'll say, I want to go down and I want it to be known for history that I do not agree with this, and I renounce what the Communist Party has done. It's been, I believe, closing in on 500 million people, 460 million plus, have quit the Communist Party. They were not all party members. They're just announcing that they no longer want anything to do with the Communist Party. And that's got to be terrifying. You're closing in on half of the population of China no longer wants this regime. And so when people say, oh, China looks so strong, the Communist Party's got the military and now they have AI and all this other stuff. But look at the hearts of the Chinese people and what they actually want.
Yeah, and behind the lion dancers and the drummers, the symbolists, and the dragon dancers is another big blue banner that says the same thing, Tui Dang. And I would just like to add, like, my late grandparents were US citizens, and before they passed away in America, they actually did make the point of quitting the party, because when they were in China, my grandma was a pediatric nurse, my grandfather was a professor, and in those workplaces, you're required to conform to the Communist Party, despite you having your own autonomy in terms of your body and your family. Spiritually and mentally, you're still not out of the box of the party. And there's even this quote in one of the pledges that CCP is mother. So it surpasses your own mother. And so you see the banner in the back there says Tuidang. And it really, the lion and the dragon dancers in the front really speak to what a celebration it is and what a great deed it is. It was kind of the same sentiment in our family as them getting US citizenship, was like quitting the party. Like, wow, you quit the party, let's go have a feast today.
In fact, you're not supposed to have any affiliation with the Communist Party when you become an American citizen. That's one of the questions you're supposed to be asked. And so, in fact, for many of the Chinese people who come to the United States, and some of them, like you said earlier, do have PTSD, and they hear police sirens, they think people are coming after them. And like, no, you have to kind of get your mind around, no, the police are here to protect us here. It's very different. They're not knocking on your door to kidnap you because you meditated in a park. But you're not supposed to have an affiliation with the Communist Party to become an American citizen.
Yeah, it's really such a hard thing for people who grow up in Western countries to appreciate the courage and the symbolism of this movement, the Global Tuidang Center, because essentially you have people that they can't get employment unless they become a party member. They can't go to higher education unless they become a party member. And so this service that the Center for Tuidang offers them is a way out. They can still have their conscience, they can still have their heart by doing this symbolic act, even through a pseudonym, and they can wipe that off their conscience because they have to put food on the table. It's a Sophie's choice for them, but the Tuidang Center offers them a way out to have a clean conscience while also being able to go about their life in mainland China. Really inspiring.
Well, for thousands of years, Chinese people did believe in the afterlife. And that's why when the Communist Party took power, the first thing they tried to do was destroy religion and any faith, because otherwise how can you get people to do these horrible things you want them to do if they believe there are consequences, right? We say what goes around comes around. They have a similar expression, good is rewarded and evil is punished. And this idea that you will have to be accountable for what you've done in this lifetime, be it in reincarnation or in the Judeo-Christian tradition in terms of heaven and hell, or in facing your ancestors and being accountable for what you did during this time. And so that's, I think, the spiritual essence behind this.
And this is exactly what the 9 commentaries, all of the chapters that you see here, it really fact checks the Chinese Communist Party's lies. Saying right here, Jiang Zemin and the CCP colluded to persecute Falun Gong, which we mentioned earlier. The CCP destroyed traditional culture during the Cultural Revolution. The history of killing by the CCP. The CCP is an evil
cult
of fundamental.
Yeah, the thing with a lot of people in China did not know the history of even the recent decades. People, in college age these days don't even know what happened on Tiananmen Square on June 4th, 1989. They don't know about the persecution of Falun Gong. They don't know about the Cultural Revolution. They're not supposed to talk about this. I remember when I was in college, we watched a movie about the Great Leap Forward, the Great Famine that killed maybe 40 million people. That was entirely man-made by Mao Zedong. And we had a woman who was a PhD from China who her job was to bring students abroad. She was back and forth, a Western educated, very sophisticated woman, and she was in tears. She said, I did not know any of this.
Yeah, this book, The 9 Commentaries, published by our sister media, the Epoch Times, as you say, it has started that Tuidang movement of people renouncing their party affiliation, because for the first time there was a thorough evaluation of the crimes against humanity inflicted upon the Chinese people. As you mentioned, the Great Leap Forward, killing 40 million people, the Cultural Revolution, just making Chinese people fearful for when they hear sirens that maybe they're next and they're going to be sent off to hard labor, in a remote area. And this book has re-examined the history since the Chinese Communist Party took over, and it has since then brought this Tuidang movement to bear, where, as we can see on the sign, nearly 500 million Chinese people have taken that step to symbolically cleanse themselves of any incidental or intentional membership to
Complicity.
That's
Yeah.
it. In many ways, people are coerced into joining the CCP or one of its affiliates. It's got youth organizations as well. So oftentimes, children, young people are coerced into it. They really feel they have no other choice. They're not sure what else to do. And so they just join from a very young age.
Or they call them a wolf cub, right? What is a wolf cub, Cynthia?
Well, usually there's a term called wolf warrior where you're willing to lay down your life for the CCP because it shows blind loyalty. A wolf cub would be the adolescent version of that. Which
Just
is
born into it. You don't even know
yeah.
anything different. You know,
Yeah, and I think the number, some people might not realize how massive this number is, how many people it really is. 400 million people is more than most countries in the world. And so if you really think about it, that's basically everyone you know plus another 460 million people.
Yeah, the U.S. population under 400, at about 350. So larger than the entire population of the United States has taken that symbolic step to cleanse themselves of any membership. And if you think about, as you alluded to earlier, Lishai, the Holocaust and how any company that was complicit with Nazi Germany, whether it was providing them business machines to military capabilities, quite a stain, of course. And the art and the film and the literature still from that time period pouring in about these narratives of these moral choices that people have to make. And as they say, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And here we are once again seeing this play out. And President Trump, of course, just arriving. And one of the things that they want him to raise the case of Jimmy Lai, someone who just wanted to publish news media, but that's not something that the Communist Party would allow. And the pastor, house
Ezra
churches.
Jin, yeah.
That's right, Ezra Jin. So you see that how the Communist Party trying to restrict freedom of information, freedom of belief.
And even if you're not a member of the Chinese Communist Party, as you can see here, anyone can sign the petition, endccp.com. Show where you stand.
I think this also comes at an important week because I don't know if you saw this week, Eileen Wong, the Arcadia mayor, like 13 miles from Los Angeles in California, pled guilty to being an agent of the CCP. She was actually deeply involved with someone that I've investigated before, John Chen, in some of the files and the news reports. John Chen is actually her handler. It really speaks to how deeply connected and how deep the influence and subversion of the CCP is in America. John Chen, if Lishai would want to briefly talk about
John
him.
Chen is a very familiar name for us at Shen Yun Performing Arts because he was arrested by the Department of Justice by an FBI sting operation for trying to sabotage Shen Yun Performing Arts in New York, trying to bribe what he thought was an IRS official to revoke our nonprofit status, also being in our area here in New York, trying to start environmental lawsuits, frivolous lawsuits, just to try to stop us. He was working with another man, and they were then sent to jail for being agents of the Chinese Communist Party, trying to stop Shen Yun Performing Arts. And then now we see his network of people. This is a man who personally shook hands with Xi Jinping that President Trump is about to meet. We have pictures of this. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Our law enforcement agencies are very much overwhelmed in terms of, I think there's 2 Chinese spy cases a day that are being filed with the FBI. There's so much infiltration of American society by the Chinese Communist Party trying to get their way. And here we go with the 9 commentaries again. One point I wanted to add to that is, when Falun Gong practitioners faced the entire force of the Chinese Communist Party coming after them in 1999, they had no rebel-rousing background, no activist background. These were people from all walks of life who just wanted to meditate. But then when they came after their family and friends and they suffered horrible persecution, they said, well, how do we tell people what's actually going on? What they call clarifying the truth. And eventually when the 9 commentaries came out, they started spreading just through, they would print this at home and go in the middle of the night and hand out these brochures to people, put them in mailboxes at great risk to themselves. Many people lost their lives for doing this. And even today, here we're celebrating Falun Dafa Day around the world. In China, there are people right now at night in China going door to door, handing out these leaflets, and they're talking to people one by one. That's how this number of 461 million people who quit the Communist Party, they're having these conversations in restaurants and in markets and at bus stations, and people are, deliberately taking taxis just so they can talk to a taxi driver over and over again about this, about quitting the party and why it's important for the future of individuals and the future of China to dissociate from the Chinese Communist Party and its crimes.
I would also argue that it's not just to wake up Chinese, like this banner says. I would argue that the 9 commentaries could also wake up America. Earlier, there was another banner from the Tuidang Center about how the 9 commentaries has really revealed the CCP's crimes. I think we can also apply that to our current situation in America, where we're finally waking up to what the CCP has done to America and American people and American democracy.
Absolutely. The number one killer of American men for several years has been fentanyl, something that traces its origin back to precursors that are made in China, and through cartel coordination is a scourge on our society, very intentional by the communist regime. And if you're just tuning in now, what you're looking at is a live shot at Bryant Park on 42nd Street, right in the center of New York City. It is the 2026 World Falun Dafa Day Parade. This procession, several thousand people coming from really all over the place to honor the 34th anniversary of Falun Dafa's public introduction to the world.
So this is an interesting thing that they found in Guizhou, this rock that's millions and millions of years old that has an inscription on it that says the Communist Party perishes. And there's a few of these examples in China where people found these auspicious prophecies and all kinds of symbols of how the end of the Communist Party is near. And that's something that for people who are more spiritual in China is very encouraging.
Yeah, I know as the Iran war rages on and the naval blockade seeks to really stymie Iran, what we see, of course, is it was China really propping up the Iranian regime through purchasing 90% of their oil and through shared dual-use technology. So much of those countries that want to spread terror and totalitarianism really could not survive without the support of the Chinese communist regime.
And of course, as you're saying, communism actually has many iterations through the Communist Party of China throughout the world, but also just in other forms in other countries. And we saw here earlier a banner saying communism, something like communism seeks to destroy the world. And if you want to learn more about the various iterations of this phenomenon of communism, the same editorial team that wrote the 9 commentaries also in recent years published another set of editorials called How the Specter of Communism is Ruling Our World. You can find that via the Epoch Times as well.
Yeah, that the root of that, I believe, with this parade is this idea that returning to tradition and truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance, these are things that can reduce your anxiety at the personal level, but at the macro level, at the international level, can really have a force multiplier in bringing benefits to society. Because before the persecution, from 1992 to 1997, there was a great time in China where people were becoming kinder. As Li Shai mentioned, the reduction of cost and burden on what was a just emerging modern healthcare system was greatly reduced.
Crime rates went down.
Absolutely, and he gave the example of factories becoming more efficient. So that's what today's parade really is about, is gratitude for the introduction of Falun Dafa just 34 years ago out of Changchun, China, by Mr. Li Hongzhi.
I love how this green pops. I feel like it's even brighter than Bryant Park, which is a difficult feat. But I think it really speaks to the lively nature of the parade and also of the spirit of everyone who is here today. Some people have traveled hours. Some people have taken flights from across America. I know some people are also international. I saw someone earlier who flew over from Greece, and then someone else who I saw in a photo of yesterday's South Korean parade, so I have no idea how that person got here. But it's just great to see everyone gathering together to celebrate this occasion.
Yeah, it is gorgeous.
And Cynthia, I think that these green banners speak to you on some other level because you've chosen a beautiful green gown to wear.
Thank you.
What is it about? Is it the spring? Is it why green? Why are these wake up the Chinese people in green banners? And why have you chosen to wear green on this wonderful occasion?
I mean, for me, it's definitely spring. I'm originally from Texas, and so the long winter in New York this year was truly terrible. I wouldn't call it hellish, but it was close. And so I think the bright green really symbolizes, like, there's been such a long winter, but they're hoping for a new spring to come to China, to America, to people all around the world who just want to practice Falun Dafa. And I think to them, Falun Dafa is that new sprout. It's a budding sprout that needs to be watered, that needs to be nourished, that needs to be supported by lawmakers in Congress. So I think it's a very apt color to choose, and I'm glad that I'm color matching.
Well, you've
today.
done so much work, I know, on the Hill with your various efforts. I'd love to just get your final thoughts as we seek to wrap up what has been a great parade production.
Yeah, I mean, Falun Dafa Day, like I said earlier, the biggest emotion I have is gratitude. Gratitude for all the activists, for all the victims who are able to come out and not only like tell their story, but repeat it multiple times. That can be extremely trauma-inducing, but all the lawmakers who are supporting us in private and in public, the State Department, the current administration, and everyone on the streets who will beep their car horn when they see us passing by, or they'll stop by and say, like, I support you when you're meditating. I really find it really encouraging. And I don't mind when people interrupt me when I'm meditating. So
You want them to?
yes,
Ask
please.
me why I'm meditating.
Please.
Well, happy World Falun Dafa Day to you, Cynthia. And Lishai, as we start to wrap up, we'd love to get your thoughts on today.
Well, for me, Falun Dafa Day is also a day of hope. A hope that one day we can celebrate Falun Dafa in China without persecution. And I think this is a time where we need more voices of support across society so we can experience that day together someday.
Well, it's been great to have you both here with us. And
Thank
yeah, that does conclude our coverage of this year's World Falun Dafa Day Parade.
Yeah, Cynthia and Lishai, it's such a pleasure to have you in the studio and to share this day with you. And thank you for coming and being a part of this.
From all of us at NTD, thank you for tuning in on such a special occasion. I'm Stephanie Cox.
And I'm Carrie Dunst.
Have a wonderful rest of your day.